Hello on this glorious and amazing day, and thanks for joining. Last week when I recorded the clip about the shooter in Texas, and we talked about the idea that although the shooting is horrific and death is horrific, we all missed the boat, how many people are in pain, and over 40,000, over 45,000 individuals in the United States that die through suicide, and so many more that attempt suicide, and I think way over 1 million that actually had a real plan for suicide, and tens of millions that actually are living in horrific emotional agony even though they go to work and they're smiling. What I want to do in the very short series that I decided last week to prepare is just share with you some of the information that I have, that I've listened to over the last 20-30 years, which is absolutely incredible, and just a little bit of awareness about suicide to get you a long way and perhaps save a life. Me and you are not responsible for people that have died via suicide, but yet if there is a chance that we could help out instead of being part of it, that would be very, very helpful. How are we part of it? Well, we'll talk about it in the near future. Let me start right off the bat about a fascinating story that I think I've shared this in the past, but it's worth repeating the story again, where I had a lovely uncle that was gay and that was molested and was suicidal, and I got to know him a few years before he passed on in 2006. And this was a conversation I had with him over the phone. And I asked my dear uncle, so when you were at the end where you decided you just want to do it, why didn't you do it? I mean, he did have a few attempts, but he told me he did ignore many of them. And he told me over the phone this fascinating story. He says, you know what, when I was 5, he said 6, I think it was when he was 5, it doesn't matter. I went to the synagogue one Saturday morning. It was with my father and my uncle Pinchas. And it was a beautiful morning in Westerly, Rhode Island, walking to the synagogue. And me as a little child, I became extremely frightened. The bell of the church went off. And I was extremely frightened. I had no clue what that noise was. I had no clue what that it meant. And suddenly, sitting there with my own fear, not knowing what to do with my fear, walking beside my uncle Pinchas, he gently held on to my hand, firmly yet gently, as we passed by the church. And when we passed by the church, he let go of my hand. And there was silence on the phone. And I'm waiting to hear what stopped him of dying through suicide or taking that path in life. And I said, after there was silence, I said, and what happened? He replied, that's what happened. He got all emotional, he began to cry. It was the only moment in my life that someone noticed me. The only moment in my life that someone noticed me. I didn't have to say anything to my uncle, and he held my hand. Each and every time he tells me, when I decide that I want to die, that I want to end it because the pain is too much, that moment of love, that moment of care, that moment that someone noticed me, tells me, no, don't. And that's why, my dear nephew, today I could talk with you. Uncle Pinchas, he continues, is long gone. But yet, because he was the rock of my life, from that short minute or two, I still go to his gravesite to be with him. When I heard this story 18, 20 years ago, it turned my whole life around. For I have thought suicide, depression, You need to turn over worlds. You need to raise hundreds and thousands of dollars. Well, many times that too. But here's just one story from many stories where a moment where someone notices you, a moment that someone realizes that you exist, a moment that someone just holds your hand, a moment that someone notices your fear, that could save their lives. His father, my lovely grandfather, may his soul rest in peace. He was in America, but it was right after the war. And when this poor child at that time came to him and describing to him issues he had, his dad, like many other dads in those days, would turn to him and say, I don't understand why you're complaining. Be happy they didn't make soap out of you. So because there was a war in Europe and over 1 million children, innocent children, were killed, a child in Rhode Island was not allowed to exist. Great. On top of that, molestation, which in my video is a molestation. I actually correlate the lack of attention to molestation. I'll put it down in the description, that series of videos. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Have yourself a wonderful and delightful day.